Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this meeting of the Sparks Police Advisory Committee. I would like to call it to order. We're going to start off with a roll call.
Okay. Ricky Melanothy. Present. John Fry.
Present.
Terry Lynn Patalera.
Present.
Tristan
McElhaney,
Haney.
present.
Chief Crawford.
Present.
We have a quorum. Those that are not here are Chad Dillard, Mackenzie Benton Corliss, and Terrell Foster.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and have everyone join me. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda, I'd like to open to public comment. This will be the first of two public comment periods offered for this meeting. And if anyone present would like to come up and say anything, feel free. All righty. Next, item agenda 5, approval of the agenda. I believe that's for the agenda for this meeting, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have yours available, Ted?
I was able to pull it up myself. Usually it pops up automatically.
I'm just waiting for the little button to pop up. It has the text, but it doesn't have the button. Oh, there it goes.
Motion to approve this, all right, let's go ahead, Ricky.
I move to approve the agenda of the Sparks Police Advisory Committee meeting for July 17th of 2023.
John Fry for the record, I second the motion. And we will proceed to a vote.
You do on here, once they click it, give her a second.
Thanks.
So your vote options.
Here we are. We can all vote now. The motion has passed, so we are set with our agenda for today. Next on our agenda, item 6, approval of minutes for the Sparks Police Advisory Committee meeting that was last held January 30th, 2023. Yep, it popped up.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was just gonna give somebody else a second.
I, John Fry, move to approve the minutes of the Sparks Police Advisory Committee meeting for January 30th, 2023.
Ricky Melanothy for the record, and I second.
We shall vote. I was not given the option to vote, and it shows 4 of us abstaining.
Okay, go ahead. Can you do it now?
No.
I guess we can probably just do it by voice then. I don't know why it's not changing.
Okay.
So I went to edit past.
Is it okay if I just call for a voice vote?
Yes.
All right.
Do it by voice.
We're going to do a voice vote for passing this motion. I, John Fry, vote yes.
Ricky Malanaphy, yes.
Geraldine Patalero, abstain. I haven't reviewed them.
Krista McElhaney, yes.
Three yeses, the motion should carry.
Not a quorum, so it'll, we'll have to put it on another agenda item.
I thought we
Or-
do have a quorum, though.
There's 3 yeses.
3 yeses and 1 no.
Oh, of that. You're good.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
So it passes, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look into that and make sure, but.
Our next agenda item, number 7, will be a presentation by Sergeant Wesley Keller to provide an overview of the newly established Neighborhood Police Unit. Welcome, Sergeant Keller.
Thank you. And Board, thank you for having me here. Like Mr. Fry said, I'm Sergeant Wes Keller with the Sparks Police Department. And this presentation will be about NPU, or the Neighborhood Police Unit, as we can see on the screens. A little bit of the background. I was tasked with starting this unit by Chief Croftworth in October of '22. At that time, the goal was to focus, this new unit's focus was on offering resources, intervention to people in need. So, back in October, welcome, sir. My name is Sergeant Wes Keller.
Forgive me. Thank you, Sergeant.
No, that's all right. Back in October, I engaged in a series of phone conversations, about 100 hours worth of conversations with different police departments around the country, stemming from Albany, New York to California. Those conversations were about police departments that already had a community services type unit, how they operated, what their policies and procedures were, and kind of the daily routines, what their programs and functions were. After several months of those conversations, I went in person to Las Vegas Metro Police Department and rode with their COPS team. They have a very established community-oriented policing unit. Rode with them for a week and saw same thing again, the daily activities and what worked for them. After that, I went to Redding, California. I rode with their unit, which is the Neighborhood Police Unit as well, and got ideas, got operations plans, orders, policies and procedures and so forth. So this unit is a hybrid of all of that. So with that, a little bit of the background, we'll go into the outline. So what I'll talk about is the NPU, or Neighborhood Police Unit mission, the functions, programs, and responsibilities that we do, the available community resources that we have in the city of Sparks, the Sparks community partnerships that we've established so far in this unit, and the measurable outcomes. So for our mission, it's a little wordy, but every single word in this makes sense to me, so bear with me. Our mission of NPU is to improve the quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors. This will be accomplished by establishing partnerships between law enforcement and the public, sharing the responsibility for protecting and improving the quality of community life through teamwork, creativity, and community resources, thus reducing crime. The goals for the neighborhood police unit are to reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, improve the quality of life, and provide outreach, resources, and intervention to those in need. So these next two slides, there's 8 bullet points, and this is, for lack of a better term, the bread and butter. These are our programs, functions, and responsibilities. This is what we do in a 10-hour day, 10-hour workday, 40 hours a week. The first bullet point and the third one are probably the biggest two, but I'm going to go over all of them. So the apartment complex managers meetings. This, let me back up a little bit. In doing some research, in the city of Sparks, we have just under 300 by definition apartment complexes. Obviously, some of them are very big, multi-hundred unit apartment complexes, and some are small, a building with 2 or 3 apartments attached to it. Out of those just under 300, we identified, between the chief and I, the top 50 that accounted for the highest volume of calls for service. The police go to these top 50 most frequently, more so than the bottom 250. So in those 50 apartment complexes, once a week, in practice, once a week, myself or the 2 other police officers that I work with, my partners, we will meet with each individual apartment manager and go over the goods and the bads, identify the issues, and biggest, most important, that last little blurb there, build rapport. Our goal, my goal in seeing how it's worked around the country, is to truly have a two-way street of communications between the apartment complex managers and the police department. It's not just for the police department, it's not just for the manager themselves, but it's for community living, for all the residents that live there. So we identify the issues, we have conversations, we talk about everything from CPTED concepts, which that stands for, in police work and law enforcement, that stands for crime prevention through environmental design. If the apartment complex, if there's 2 or 3 broken down cars in, hypothetically, the northeast corner of the complex, oil is dripping from the cars, they're just it looks terrible. The concepts of CPTED suggest that we remove those eyesores and it will discourage criminal activity. So we'll talk about that stuff. Furthermore, before these weekly meetings, myself or the officers, they actually research the last week's worth of calls for service. In the last 7 days, hey, what happened? If you are the apartment manager, I'm going to tell you all the police activity over the last week, just so you know what's going on at your place, and together we can identify trends, we can identify problems. I might say something about an apartment number, hey, we're over here for a fight or something like that, and this has happened, and you'll say, oh, I know exactly who those tenants are, we've actually had numerous problems, this is now enough that we might start looking at, as the apartment organization, they might look at evictions, or together we look at resources or something to fix the issue, the problem, the constant calls for service that patrol gets. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. For the second program, chronic nuisance and abatement is, this is where we're working with the city code enforcement. I would say virtually every city in the United States has some sort of code enforcement, some sort of county enforcement entity. We have our city code enforcement here. This is where our plan is to work well with them, better than historically has been, with code enforcement to fix these nuisance, abandoned properties, the boarded up properties, and for lack of a better term, the eyesores in our neighborhood. Historically, code enforcement has takes the lead, and they still do. But through some legal processes, it can take an awful long time for code enforcement to have any sort of true action, for there to be a solution to this abandoned property. Boarded up windows, broken out windows, nobody lives there. Unfortunately, drug use and other crimes occurring in these abandoned properties. So with this program, we're hoping to, and we have so far, connected the links between code enforcement and law enforcement a little bit more securely. And we're working together to, maybe more quickly identify the landlord of the property and start having some true effect for the neighborhood around it. That one's in its infancy still, but it's coming along really well in the very short time that we've been doing this. For the third one, the program of patrol referrals, like I said at the beginning, this is another bread and butter. This is where the patrol officers identify an issue that is a much bigger issue than what they can reasonably deal with during the call for service. And let me put it into a little bit of perspective. In 2022, last year, Sparks Police Department responded to 92,000 calls for service. From 911s to non-emergency calls, 92,000. Out of those 92,000, 12,619 police reports were generated in 2022. To put it in a little bit more of a perspective, right now, I didn't check the screen since I've been standing in here. There's 7 police officers on the road for a swing shift weekday patrol. There's 2 supervisors, 2 sergeants, and 1 lieutenant currently on duty. My point is there's not a lot of people. It would be unusual for a patrol officer on any call for service, whether we go to somebody's house, they're a victim of a burglary, it's a traffic stop, even like a sexual assault. The patrol response is taking the information, getting the who, what, when, why, how, that kind of information, if necessary, forwarding it to detectives on those major cases, but they don't spend a lot of time. 2 hours on a call for service would be considered in our line of work a long time. As we can all imagine, there is calls where maybe it's a noise disturbance, maybe it's a domestic battery or a violence situation, but is what we're called for, but there's bigger, deeper rooted issues for this call for service. When the patrol officers identify that, hey, there's a lot more going on than what's at face value, that's where I get a call, my partners get a call, we get an email, and hey, this is what happened. This guy ended up getting arrested, this person got a citation, or whatever the outcome was. We'll get the incident number and the case number, and then we'll do the appropriate follow-up. And we'll do the appropriate follow-up on a timeline that is not nearly as strict as patrol's timeline. We don't have 2 hours. I will take as long as needs to be taken, and the other officers will, to solve the problem, to connect the problem to the appropriate resources. So that's the referrals for patrol. Nextly on the programs, the quarterly meetings with the Children's Cabinet. Several months ago, about 6 months ago, I met with the director, Frank Cervantes, and his program director, Jeremy Stocking. Great people, and they run an incredible organization at the Children's Cabinet. I'll get into it in a slide or two, but they have a plethora of resources for youth in our community in Washoe County that they are tailored to youth between the ages of 12 and 17 years old. So we meet with them. They're, again, same like the apartment complex managers meetings. Hey, what's the goods? What's the bads? What are we seeing? How can we improve? Those kind of things. Furthermore, they have resources that they've helped us with that, as far as the chief and I were aware, the police department didn't have, I wouldn't say access, but maybe were somewhat ignorant. The chief wasn't, let me correct myself. Maybe I was ignorant to some of those true resources that were out there. So we'll continue with those meetings. School presentations and functions. So we've started right now with the elementary school age kids, and the goal or the vision is to be that public, that community figure in these schools that for these kids. Talking to the teachers and the principals and then the counselor and organizing the whole thing just shows that we're human just like they are. There's no difference between you and I, and it's not something to be scared or apprehensive about. And it's another voice, some sort of an authority voice that says, hey, we always do what's right. We always do what's right for the right reason. We never lie, cheat, and steal. Stuff like that. Our last school presentation was on June 6th at Robert Mitchell Elementary School. And then before that, about a month before that, was at the Mater Academy, right on the Reno Sparks border there. For this page, Dean Hill's monthly security meetings. So NNSDA is the Northern Nevada Security Directors Association. Dean Hill is a prominent figure in our community. He is, I believe his title is the Senior Director for Peppermill Security Operations. He's a tremendous resource to us at the police department. I've worked personally with him for many years. And he organizes these monthly meetings that, the same thing, it's information sharing, it's networking. What is some trends that we're seeing in law enforcement and in not only this community, but say down in Vegas. There's community members as far down as the southern tip of Las Vegas that attend these meetings. Quick example, with the warmer weather, the street racers, there's gatherings of street racers and souped up cars, and unfortunately, and sometimes instead of gathering for legitimate purposes, they gather to race around the city to do what they call these sideshows. They'll go into the various parking lots around town and do burnouts in the parking lots. And that wouldn't seem like that big of a deal until they come up with the numbers. Recently, through these meetings, Dean sent me some videos. Hey, I'll forward these to the traffic unit. But just so you know, the Western Village has had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage trying to remove these burnouts, skid marks, broken glass bottles, and so forth on the private property. So these monthly meetings is a networking and just information sharing. For the last two programs, intervention, this is where we will accompany the victim advocates with major crimes and the follow-up. We're not doing the detective work, where the detectives are there to do the casework. What we can offer is to meet with the victims to stop the cycle of violence. And the best example here, this was actually coined from Las Vegas. They have had tremendous success with their intervention program. But the primary example is a gang-type shooting. So gang member on gang member, there's a shooting. Hopefully there's not a homicide, but sometimes there is with these shootings. And if there is, we would meet with the victim family and try to, just like the title says, an intervention, try to intervene, and meet with them and stop this cycle of violence, specifically the retaliatory violence that accompanies gang-type shootings and gang interactions. And lastly, crime-free multi-housing is within the next 6 or 8 months. All of this is a building block or puzzle pieces for a very specific reason. So crime-free multi-housing, we have to have the apartment managers meetings totally well-oiled. It has to run smoothly. We have the rapport. There is that two-way street of communications. we go over the, the speed bumps and it's all ironed out. When that time comes, we're going to attempt to adopt crime-free multi-housing in Sparks. If you're not aware, crime-free multi-housing is a program run through the International Crime-Free Association. It's an organization that was started by a retired police officer in Mesa, Arizona in late 1992. His name is Tim Zerg. He's still running the program. The goal of this program, well, the program is a state-of-the-art crime prevention program designed to reduce crime, drugs, and gangs on apartment properties. They do this through lease addendums, the crime-free lease addendums, and essentially it's a three-step process where the apartment complex goes through the training. We train them of what to look for in crime trends. We reintroduce the theories of CPTED, and the apartment complex buys into it, and they go take the training. The second phase is the police survey phase. One of us will go through and say, hey, specifically, there's things that we would look for according to the training, such as minimum door, window, and lock standards. So there's like a compliance inspection for that. Minimum exterior lighting standards, key control procedures, and landscape maintenance standards. All of these things kind of revolve around this CPTED theory. So we'll partner with our crime prevention officer in Sparks, which we have one, and go over and start crime-free multi-housing. That is it for the programs. So how do we do this? It is the policy of MPU to address both crime and quality of life problem-solving issues through community policing. This will be facilitated through the nationally recognized SARA model, which all law enforcement officers have heard from the academy, at the academy level on: scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. So far, there's 3 of us: myself, Officer Hale-Byron, and Officer Trevino. They're in the future, pending department needs and budget stuff, that we may look at a 4th one, but that is in the future. This next slide, community partners. These are the community partnerships that have already been established. For the first one, CSA, the Community Services Agency, which is for struggling people, families in need, and they have a ton of resources out there. Just to name a few that are here, they can assist with affordable housing. They have the Head Start. They run the Head Start and the early Head Start programs. They have energy efficiency programs to help folks with their energy bills, and they have employment assistance and training programs. Secondly, or next, the Children's Cabinet. That's what I had already touched on just a second ago. And they provide services for youth 12 to 17 years old. They have their children's, I think it's childrenscabinet.org is the actual website. But it's really neat the way they have organized their resources, and how it works is if the child or an adult that's calling on behalf of the child calls this 1-800 number, the Safe Place number, they'll get routed. The person on the other end triages these phone calls. So they partner, like it says here, with over 70 entities to figure out and work through that triage process. If there's drug and alcohol issues, it'll go maybe a little bit more to one side. It might go the other way if there's family counseling issues, or whatever it seems like once again, the root issue is how the triage process will work, to get to the appropriate channel. Next, Washoe County Court Services. It's just another option for us. I think that most people know that there are alternatives or diversionary courts out there. This is really important for us. When the charges aren't very significant and there is that bigger, more resonating root issue, and there's maybe somebody who was arrested or given a cite for drug paraphernalia, I'm not saying one way that that's good or bad. I'm stating that in the big scheme of things, if we can possibly take it from a normal court procedure or workflow to the drug court one, it allows us to be able to give the person better resources and work through truly what the root issue is. So there's diversion drug court, there's diversion family court, and mental health courts that we'll work with. Next, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We partnered with Bigs with Badges, and simply it's linking positive mentors with at-risk youth. We have participated in the program, and so has Washoe County Sheriff's Office and the Reno Police Department as well. And lastly, code enforcement. I touched on it with the chronic nuisance and abatement, but as it relates to community partnerships, we'll help the police, code enforcement, and us will work together to adhere to the structures of CPTED and realizing that truly the design of the environment, the design of buildings can either encourage or discourage crime. And if we understand that, we realize it, it's a prong of crime prevention, and it's better for everybody. These next two slides are available community resources. There's only maybe 20 of them listed here. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but what's important also is that one of our main drives at the police department, every officer has access to a full list of community resources that is far bigger than these examples here. It's single-spaced, regular sheet of paper, and I don't know how many there are, but there's quite a bit. Those sheets not only have what the resource is, who's the point of contact for the resource, the phone number, email address, how do you actually get a hold of them. Some of these resources, so the ones that we've used so far, Veterans Affairs Office, the Veterans Resource Center over on Montello Street. Then they prevent veterans' families from entering homelessness. They have it's like a almost kind of thing. Medicaid, mainly for acquiring medical insurance. There's resources for employment assistance, such as Sierra Nevada Job Corps and day labor. There's several drug and alcohol counseling resources in our area, but specifically, unfortunately, a busy one, the Life Change Center in the 1700 block of Sullivan Lane. Other resources include the diversion courts, which I spoke about, and Washoe County Alternative Sentencing, which we keep in touch with as well. Mental health services, there is a ton as well, but I think you've had a presentation from most a few months back from Lieutenant Russell, and he explained, if you weren't present, just briefly, our two clinicians are embedded with the police department. They work very closely with the officers. It's not 24/7, but it's very close to that type of coverage. And so when we, as MPU in our unit, when we come across some mental health issues, mental health concerns, one of the first resources I'll reach out to, and the two officers, my partners that I work with, we'll reach out to our embedded clinicians, since we have such a great relationship. Sometimes they're busy on a call. We can reach out to several others in town as well. And then lastly, homeless shelters. We have the women's shelter and Our Place, which is over by Baldini's and Sparks. Housing and urban development, and specifically right where we're sitting here, the Sparks City Housing Program we have as well. Different resources for educational opportunities, TMCC, vocational and tech schools, for domestic violence, not only prevention and awareness, but in the unfortunate event that it happens, counseling to help as well. Nevada 211, their website is really great as well, focusing on food, behavioral health, healthcare, and utility services. Social services, I think that's an obvious one for health and welfare. And some other additional community resources for housing, Reno Housing Authority, Washoe Legal Services, and the Nevada Housing Division. So that wraps it up for MPU so far. Like I said at the beginning, we just started. We started in October of 2022 is when the chief tasked me with starting this unit. And about 6 months after that, April 10th, is when the other two officers started, and it's still a work in progress. It's busy, but I think we're on the right path. With just now hearing about this, is there any questions or anything you'd like me to expand on a little further? If there's not, that's okay. The email address is there, and you can always feel free to reach out.
Geraldine Padalero, I have several questions.
Okay.
First, I want to say I think it's a great program. This is my first meeting, so for my fellow board members, I have a lot of questions, so thanks for bearing with me. I think it's a great program. I actually am very close to the person who created the community policing programs in Fremont and Roseville in California. And I think, what you've described is great. I do have several questions and comments. One of the goals in the very beginning, I think would be helpful to have something about furthering trust. I didn't see that. And I think that's important, and not establish. I think it's a matter of furthering the trust within the community. I think that's really an important goal. Is this a full-time role for you, or a role that's in addition to other responsibilities that you have?
All of the supervisors in the building have additional collateral assignments, additional duties, but this is my primary. I think what you're looking for is, the answer would be yes. This would be my primary.
Okay, so you're primary, but you're not fully dedicated to this because you have other responsibilities too? Is that fair?
I think it would be most accurate to say 90% of my day would go to this.
Okay, thanks. How, if at all, do you use volunteers for all the programs that you described?
Because we just started, we haven't entertained volunteers yet. I know it's been talked about, but working out the logistics of it hasn't been bridged yet.
Okay. The program where you're meeting with elementary school children, I think is great. Do you have a more specific program that addresses youth at risk?
At this time, we don't.
Okay.
The good thing is the Washoe County School District has police officers there, they have counselors there. So I don't want to speak outside of my purview, but I would assume that is where that would address your question.
Okay, thanks. And then the last question I have is about bilingual officers. Is at least one of your officers on your team bilingual?
Yes,
Okay. In what language?
in Spanish.
Okay. Any other?
Not 100%, but he understands it and can carry on a conversation. If he's not working, we have different resources out there. We have translators. We also have several other officers. It's very common with whether what we're doing or patrol or detectives, we can reach out and get a translator fairly easily.
Okay. How many languages is the department able to service?
Through our language bank, we use an outside language bank, and I don't know the number of languages, but I can tell you there's never been an issue where they weren't able to translate
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tristan McElhaney. One quick question. Is your unit the unit that works with the Handle with Care Act or Handle with Care notifications?
No.
Chad Dillard, when you're going into schools, are you guys going in completely geared up? Do you have a lower level dress, and do you feel like that might have an effect on the way that you connect with youth?
To answer the first part of your question, just as I walked in here today, this is our uniform, hence why I wore this one. This is our daily uniform. We would go in uniform. There's several safety reasons for that. One being in a marked car, getting from point A to point B, listening to the radio traffic in between. If there was, a major event or patrol was short, as I explained earlier, that we could divert and go help, somebody else in need. The second part of your question, from my experience so far, I've been in law enforcement almost 19 years, about 16 with Sparks Police. In my experience with schools and kids, they love this. The gear, the uniform is an absolute attention magnet. So it would be an interesting study to see if dressing down, what the psychological effect is, positive or negative.
Ricky Malanphy, just regarding the dressing, I think in elementary schools, definitely positive to wear uniform. Kids that age are really excited, being, police for the day or anything like that. I think it's getting into middle school and high schools that they kind of already have perceived notions as to what the police do. And they might take it more as a threat if police are coming in gear than elementary school students. So I see where you're coming from by dressing down for for going and talking to students, but I think elementary schools would really be excited about it. So.
Okay, thank you.
John Fry. I had a question about talked about your availability for the unit with the 3 officers currently working. How often is the NPU able to staff? About how many shifts? Is it every single day, or do you guys have to spread out coverage to make sure that you have it?
Yeah, right at this time, it's Monday through Thursday in the day shift type hours. So I work 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and so do the other 2 officers.
And that's good to know. I appreciate that. Can you speak a little bit to the call volume you guys have started to go through? I know the other 2 officers joined a little more recently. On a typical day, how many reports are you getting forwarded to you where there's something more to follow up on? And on average, how many do you feel you're able to get through with your team?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers with me. I would say off the top of my head, it's very conservative to say about 4 or 5 referrals, and just referrals, patrol referrals, 4 or 5 per week. And the apartment, stemming from the apartment complex managers meeting, we'll have at least 2 or 3 complaints per day. So there's quite a bit. And even if those numbers don't sound like a lot, so let's add those together, and there's 6, 7 per week is what I just described. Each one of those might take, a full day, multiple days, calling family members, organizing adult protective services, trying to get a counselor involved, trying to get, drug and alcohol counseling, started. So they take a while. We were able to work on a few at a time, a few issues or cases, shall we say. But sometimes it can, I've had it to where it was a phone call that fixed the problem. And that was all that the person needed. And we've had it to where we've worked them for over a week, the issue, until we were very comfortable that we got down, we dove down, drilled to the root and figured it out.
That's awesome to hear. Ever since I became a member of this committee, NPU, now that we know the official name of it, is probably one of the programs I've been most excited to see, just because of how the other programs in the department, between Hope, between Most, seeing opportunities for officers to do more than just show up and handle a bad guy. That's obviously job number one. But I really like seeing more of these programs come to fruition because it goes towards what other committee members have mentioned with trust. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, for officers to be able to reach out to show the community, hey, we're not just here to, give you a bad day with a speeding ticket or this or that. We really care. We really want to help. And I know your officers feel that. I've talked to so many of them that, you just feel good afterward, that you can tell they have their pride in their job. And this is, I feel like, another opportunity for officers to be able to do that. So I'm excited to see this come to fruition, and your presentation looks like you guys are off to a killer start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keller, can you give them an example, since you have started this unit, maybe calls for service, that maybe you guys went to the bigger picture and how that's changed for patrol?
Sure. Wish you would have asked me that an hour ago.
I know we had talked about one specific where we had been to a certain area several times patrol-wise, and you guys get involved. That's changed dramatically.
Not quite sure if we're thinking of the same one.
Had a couple, so.
So there was an elderly lady, I'm gonna leave her name out of this, an elderly lady that lived in West Sparks. There was numerous calls for service for this elderly lady. The tipping point was a neighbor down the street had called essentially a home invasion, like a burglary, and this lady elderly, had some mental health issues as well, and she would walk around and just open your door, and just go sit down on the couch, make a sandwich, drink a cup of coffee, and think nothing of it. Well, she would do this the first time the patrol officers talked to the victim, quote unquote, and I don't think she really knew what was going on, and they thought, oh, yes, she does. And so she was taken back home, and she did it again. She was taken back home, she did it again. And to the point where it's almost like we need to arrest this lady for home invasion, for trespassing, for something to stop the behavior. We spent some time with her. We identified her son. He was, unfortunately, due to the family dynamics, he was very hard to get a hold of for us, which isn't usually common. He lived in a town east of here, and with him, with some other family members, we were given more information. We ended up getting with Adult Protective Services. She ended up having a case manager, a caseworker, and she's had changed her medications, and that was several months ago, and we haven't had a call for service for her since. She's on the right path, and it was between trying to coordinate with the caseworker, get the mental health resources lined up. We actually talked to our embedded clinician with her and the family members out of town. That took several days for phone calls to be returned and so forth. So that, Chief, that's the one I was kind of thinking, but if you refresh my memory, I could go on some others.
Thank you.
Carolyn Padalero, that's a great one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chad Dillard. And first, I want to say, it's kind of gratuitous. Everybody puts a picture of Chris in every presentation. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, a great example of right, arresting isn't always the best option in using those resources. But great, I'm really excited about this program.
Thank you, sir.
one more question. You said you guys were doing one-on-one visits with the apartments once a week
Yes.
for the management. Even if you were there for an hour, that's a full-time job in itself. Do you guys have it split up between the 3 people, or are you guys just kind of hit and miss, like wherever is in your area for the day? Or do you guys have it kind of split up so you're going the same time, or is it just drop-ins when you have time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Before the other 2 officers joined on April 10th, I was doing all 50 of them. It was quite a bit, as
whole
you can
job.
imagine. Now, the way we have it is it's split in thirds. It's a little disproportionate, actually. I think I do about 6 or 7 of them, because even 25 apiece is an awful lot. Because on every single contact, it's rare that, oh, hey, yeah, everything's good. Everything's great. Yep. So that usually doesn't happen. So, we split it. It's almost in thirds, but with some of my other responsibilities, such as this kind of stuff, I'm not able to take on all of it.
Gotcha, thank you.
Carolyn Padalero. What kind of publicity are you contemplating to publicize the great program that you've put together? Or are you considering publicizing?
Yes, and we have, we have the news here with us today. And there have been social media posts about it. We have put the word out through, regular contacts, the patrol officers, when, they'll talk about our unit. So the publicity outside of our community, I don't know that necessarily,
No, within the community.
okay. Yeah, and.
That's my
and
question.
Yes, we
Within-
have.
Okay, great.
This morning, I actually talked to one of the other news outlets as well about this.
Thanks.
I know City of Sparks has like a Monday Minute where they run down things. That might be a good thing for that, to run down what you guys do also.
It's a great idea. It's actually planned for next week with Julie. But that's a great idea.
Anybody else? Sergeant Keller, thank you for that presentation. That was awesome, and look forward to seeing more of your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, the committee will move to agenda item number 8, general business. We're going to see what pops up here.
There is none.
There is none.
There is none. All right. We'll move then to agenda item number 9, comments from the public. This is our second public comment period, open to anyone in attendance. If anyone would like to be heard, please come forward. Empty chairs all stayed where they are. Next, we will move to agenda item number 10, announcements from the chief and staff and committee members. I think I'll swing that over to you first, Chief, if you don't mind.
Thanks, sir. Chris Crawford for the record. Just a couple things to let you know. We're still working on the dispatch certification program with Rocky Meadows Community College. That should be online for this fall. I know Reno Police Department has joined us in that endeavor, which is a good thing. And also some really exciting news is we have, for the first time in 4 years, closed our police officer recruitment, as we are 2 vacancies from being full with police officer. There is currently 10 recruits in the academy, and there are more than 20 people currently going through backgrounds for our final positions. So
That's great.
we're hopeful that we will be there with our records department in the next few months and focused on dispatch. Thank you.
That's great to hear. Excellent news. Are there any announcements from any of the committee members? I'm only going to make one and want to say I would like to welcome our 2 newest members. On the record, we already shook hands, but just want to say it out loud. I believe with that, we are concluded for this meeting. We have finished all of our agenda items, and I will call for adjournment. Take care, everybody.